Are you happy? Are you deep down satisfied with the person you are, how you're living your life, and the future as it appears today? Do you have a passion? Is there any one thing in your life that is so important that it makes prioritizing everything else simple? If the answer to any of those questions is no, do you have any idea why? Welcome to the Verimour Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Keegan, co-founder of the dating app Verimour and the nonprofit app Hero Harbor. Happiness, mine and that of others, is something that's always been very important to me. I've devoted my life to understanding how we take the things life throws at us and combine that with our own special gifts to come away with an experience that, while not always perfect, is one we are proud of and allows us the fewest regrets and least amount of heartache. Whether through my personal musings or conversations with guests, the aim here is not to find a one-size-fits-all to-do list of change, but instead a mindset that lessens our fear, reduces judgment of ourselves and others, and frees each individual to build the life that truly represents happiness for them. Thank you for joining us on the Verimour Speaks podcast. I've always worked to provide the most honest, helpful content I could in forms that reach the largest possible audience. And my extreme dislike of greed-driven organizations means I do so without ads or sponsors. But for us to continue improving with better guests and more consistent production quality, we need your help. If you have found any value in what we do and the content provided, please show us a little love by making a contribution directly to the podcast or as a tax-deductible donation on the heroharbor.org website. Thank you again for listening, and please enjoy the show.
Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls.
Welcome back. This evening I have the pleasure of speaking with Tosh. I'm gonna give this a try because he just pronounced it for me. Your first name is Brian, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's Brian Chontosh, right? Okay, and he says
Yeah.
my journalistic curiosity mind had to ask, and he says it's Hungarian. Anyway, thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, my
Tosh,
pleasure, please.
Tosh is my first officer interview, so he's a first for us. We just finished doing our first group interview, so I'm very excited, both of those first. Tosh is a Marine, and I keep saying my interviews are Marine heavy, not because I don't invite everyone else, but because the Marines are the ones who show up. So before we get to, there's so many things I want to ask you, and that I want to talk to you about. I want to give a real quick backstory about how as best as I can, we came to meet. I truthfully don't know where I learned about your podcast. It's just somewhere in my research somewhere. It said, you have a podcast called Crooked Butterfly. And so I went and checked it out, and I listened to a couple of episodes, and I was just so struck by, first of all, Tosh is the antithesis of what everyone thinks of as a Marine. He is very, very cerebral. If you listen to his podcast, you'll discover very quickly that he's not, just a big dumb bullet stopper like they typically think of us. And so that was so very cool to me. But I have to ask you, where did you get the anyway, so when I started listening to him, I was impressed, so I went and reached out to him, and he was kind enough to grant me the interview. Where does the name Crooked Butterfly come from?
Oh man, a bunch of different things just kind of lined up. A little bit on the romantic side with my partner Nicole, and ultimately it's just butterflies don't fly in straight lines. Their paths are crooked, and they're no less beautiful because the direction that they travel is suspect to wind, environmentals, and life as we know it. And I think that's just a lot like us. We try so hard to drive these straight linear directions, these paths, and it's just not the case. And when we embrace our journey being just as it's supposed to be, crooked, a little offbeat here and there, in the right direction at times, and sometimes we blow adrift, that we recognize life truly is beautiful. So we started our leadership business, and it became Crooked Butterfly.
I love it. See, I told you, very cerebral. The man does not leave anything unthought. Okay, so, all right, so tell me about the business, if you don't mind, real quickly, because you've got nearly 13. I have not been able to. Typically I would have done more research and found out more about you, but the fact that you're a Marine was just about all I needed to know. So yeah, tell me about what it is that you guys do before we get into some of the topics that struck me so much.
I like to. Well, we're experiential learning in the leadership field, and we leverage nature. Mm-hmm. You can't lie to nature. We lie to ourselves all the time. We surround ourselves with people that allow us to lie to ourselves, and they reverberate the same message that we want to hear, we like to hear. But Mother Nature, she just doesn't allow that. In fact, even when she doesn't allow it, it's non-judgmental. There's nothing emotional about it. There's nothing personal about it. It just is what it is. And I find that a lot of my leadership philosophies, my life directions and guidances are amplified when I'm out there in nature. So what I like to do is I like to take units, teams, individuals, whatever, find out what their value systems are, and I create customized experiences to get us outdoors a little bit and discuss leadership, life, and all of those things. It takes on a bunch of different platforms depending on the client, but ultimately it's a leadership company that uses experiential learning outdoors to facilitate team dynamics, excellence, things like that.
There's another organization I learned about recently. I think it's called The Program, and they are they're owned by and almost completely run by, their instructors are nearly very Marine heavy, but nearly all military. And what they do is they're working to move into a corporate environment, but to this point, they've typically they work with athletes, college athletes, things like that, teams. And I had dinner with one of the owners one night, and he was saying that they do it through adversity training, and sort of a slightly watered down version of military boot camp type thing. Just teaching you that you can do more, that you're physically capable of doing more, and teaching them to work teamwork and things like that. So it sounds it sounds like what you guys do, while it's slightly different in terms of target audience. You're taking what you learned in the military, and you're turning it into something usable out here, which is and so I applaud both of your companies for that. Anyway, so
Eric Kapitulik out there at The Program runs a great thing. He's an awesome individual, and we have a mutual friend, rest in peace, Doug Zembeck, that runs the same thread. He was fabulous Marine. And
so
The Program, great organization out there on the East Coast. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So it's Sam. What happened is, I can't think of his last name right now, but anyway, Sam, one of the co-owners, was working out at my gym one day, and he's an amputee, and because of what I do at Hero Harbor, and because I am afraid of no one intimidates me, my girlfriend happened to point him out, and just looking at him and seeing, I was like, I would have bet every paycheck that he was a veteran. And so I went over, started talking to him, and struck up a conversation, and that's how we ended up, having dinner and such. But and I loved what he did, because I just don't think sometimes things. I open my mouth before. Anyway, I was walking up to him, I was about to hand him a business card, and he had his hands full. And I said something about, I said, you don't have enough hands, or you need more hands. And then the moment it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, you idiot bitch, And he immediately, without missing a beat, came back with, oh, I've got plenty in my bag. I was like, I love you, thank you. It was just, he was not, I loved it. It was awesome. And I immediately knew he was my kind of person. So that kind of goes to some of the things that I was listening to. I went back and listened again to your pilot episode this evening, and I think it was a timing thing. The morning that I listened to it, I was actually leaving the gym, and the morning I listened to it, I struggle with many of the same things that you do, but that particular morning, it was just really heavy on my mind. And so some of the things you talk about are the back and forth of, I've often said that humility is overrated. I own my gifts. I will tell you what I'm good at, but I also own the things that are challenging about me, and I will, I don't. That's okay. I don't mind. Because if I tell you what my gifts are, then you may be able to find a way to use those. And if I own up to my challenges, then my feelings aren't hurt when somebody walks away with, from me because of them, But what I was struck by is just how cerebral, I'm gonna have to put my old lady reading glasses on to see some of the things I wrote down. Oh, by the way, in your podcast, you said something about getting caught up. And this is exactly what triggered it for me. You were talking about getting caught up in the details and caught up in, being paralysis by analysis, basically, needing to perfection. And that's, I go through that constantly. But one of the things you said was, worrying about a great picture. And I have to say that you actually picked a really great picture for the podcast cover. So whether you intended to or not, you covered that base pretty well. But like I said, the thing that struck me that morning, and I really do want to shut up so you can say something, was just this: we can't help people if we have a good message and we have something to offer, but we're constantly holding ourselves back with the self-judgment and things like that. So talk to me about, that, about the allowing yourself to be just, I'm going to shut up, and you just go ahead. You run with that. And
but I don't know what you're asking.
It's water. I swear it's water. It's not vodka.
I believe you. That's all right. I'm not sure I know what you're asking.
Okay. In your initial.
I started the podcast because I needed to. A bunch of different reasons, right? I'm not a Marine officer, active duty anymore. I don't have a platform to talk and influence and affect hundreds of Marines. I was at the Naval Academy for my last tour, and I was able to influence for what I thought was the better, and taking that job on professionally and seriously, you think a lot about what you're going to try to influence the midshipmen with. And after retiring, a few years go by, and you just sort of miss that. You find yourself frustrated with the noise and the clutter that's out there that audience is gravitating towards, and I think it's garbage. And so I have a couple choices. I can continue to be frustrated with it. I could point fingers and criticize it. I could, do many different things, and all of those very, very reactive. Or I could just put my money where my mouth was and offer. And that's what I wanted to do. I was beyond the whiteboard. Mo and John have been big fans of mine for a long time, and I have no idea why. Mm-hmm. But they're beautiful human beings, and they just said, hey, man, we want to get you out on some more channels. Your Instagram account is amazing. If people would read what you're writing and think. They might be excited to be better people, but we got to get you out on more channels.
Right.
And so they said, we want to put a podcast out there. And I was reluctant to write a book, reluctant to do whatever, because I'm mildly interested in promoting myself, right? The only reason I would be interested in promoting myself is to grow an audience in order to be able to give.
Yeah.
And it's weird, it's different. And then I can get very accusatory towards other people that I feel, it's my perception that they're, just aggrandizing themselves for attention. But here's the piece, like I talked about in the debut episode. I don't want my sons and daughters listening to so-and-so or so-and-so or so-and-so in the leadership sphere talking about what they're talking about, because I find it garbage.
Right.
And I want to have a stronger voice in my child's life or my children's lives than those individuals. And so I treat my podcasts that my son and my daughters are going to listen to this someday. My parents are listening to this, and my wife and my closest friends. And I don't want them like rolling their eyes, calling bullshit, because it's easy for a stranger to fall in love with whatever you're selling. Nobody knows you. So, and so I just said, hey, fine, I'm going to do it. And I'm walking through this thing authentically, just trying to share my thoughts and processes. And, I've had a lot of men reach back out to me, and I know my accomplishments in the military. I'm not stuck to them. It's a part of who I am, but it doesn't identify me solely. It's a very, very snapshot of who I am. But those snapshots are very significant and energizing. And so, people will hold you on a pedestal. And what I want to do is for the people that do that, or the people that think the world of you, or the people that don't know your faults and they just accept your accomplishments, that I have the same feelings and thoughts and confusions and self-doubts that they do, and it's okay. I feel that there's a terrible rift that occurs when we look at our superheroes out there, right? Personality A, personality B, personality C, and they have no faults because they're managing and manipulating your perception. And all that, that's cool. That provides somebody to strive to be as maybe an ideal, but ideals have always let me down. I've found much more success in realism and authenticity. And so what I'm trying to do is these same very things. And this is what's going on in my mind and how it works. And if that can be of an advantage to you to help you sort through your issues and your problems, if that can resonate with you, and you can say, hey, wow, it's working for him, maybe I'll try that, then I'm affecting people that I want to give to. And so that's what my podcast is about. I'm not interviewing people. I'm not blowing myself. I'm not, pointing finger. I'm just trying to share. And if hopefully that helps. And if it doesn't, don't take it.
It does. It helps the people who. Okay, so here's a few things that went through my mind. Speaking to the podcast versus the the Instagram, and this is why I've had a couple of podcasts in the past. The reason I started this this one now is that different people learn in different ways. Some people will listen to stuff, like I don't read anything. If I can't listen to it via audio, via book, via podcast, I don't get it consumed, because those things I can do while I'm driving, I can do it while I'm cleaning house, that sort of thing. I just do not sit still to read a book. So you reach people in the way that they learn best. I love, that's the other thing that I have found in terms of, I've had a very dynamic life. I'm closing in very quickly on 53, and when people say, where are you from, I say everywhere and nowhere. I have ties to 25 out of 50 states. I'm fearless in the sense that I will get up and go anywhere and do anything because of that. And I'm an overachiever. It's like I push the boundaries on everything. So there are things that other people can look at and say, wow, you wrote a book, or wow, you deadlifted 315 for reps, or wow, you were a Marine. All of those things were within my comfort zone. So it's a couple of things that, you made me think. I was thinking about this idea that, nothing is ever enough for us. We are always pushing harder. But the authenticity thing, what I share with people is that, yes, I did. I was very healthy. I did bodybuilding, but I also got to a place where I reached almost 300 pounds. I have a titanium cage and stuff on my back because, and I ran a half marathon once with my britches full of shit the entire time and never knew it. The thing is, all that stuff that I've been through, there is no fear, there's no pride, there's no embarrassment, because if what I've been through can help you in any way, if nothing else, just to know that, as you said, there's others out there, because some people don't want to talk about it. The social media is full of all the happy and the fake lives, and we have such a crisis, not just with heroes, but crisis in the U.S. across the board with suicide, and a large part of it is because of that lack of authenticity. We go on dates and we fake it, it's like we show our best selves, and it's pointless. We get into relationships that don't work. I'm preaching to the choir, that. And so I think, again, that's why just listening to you at the time, what I was trying to say, though, what I was getting at was one of the things you talked about was how you're concerned about coming off as with hubris, or with as vain, or as narcissistic, or whatever, and the fear of doing that, or the concern of doing that, leads you to often not do things, and go. We go back and forth with, we have to be our best cheerleaders. We have to acknowledge the things we're good at, because we can't help people if we don't. But we're so concerned with our image. And it's like, on the one hand, I don't give a shit what other people think about me. And on the other hand, I think I care very deeply because, again, like you said, we can't reach people if they're looking at us, as some pompous asshole. We won't reach the people that we care about in that manner. Anyway, so I know that was a rambling of a number of things. So,
I like what you're saying about a few things, but I'm a fan of balance, and maybe that's because I like, I don't know, I like balance. Anything to the extreme is not smart. So caring about what other people think of you, I think, is valuable, as long as it's tempered with not putting too much ownership in that, right? And caring deeply about yourself, I think, is very, very important, but also not to the extreme that it does feed, selfish behaviors. Like, so it's age old balance. It's all about balance. Every time I'm presenting with one side of the coin, I like to take it and flip it over and just process it, because ultimately that's what's going to keep you grounded. It keeps you engaged, not on, some sort of automation of a socialized personality that you end up not having control of. Remaining conscious,
The other thing too that I've found is that, you talk about that authenticity is, in the end, that's what people respond to. Like, when I first started promoting HH back, I don't know, whenever, October, November, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't have content. Again, it's a path. And you can know where you're headed, but like you said, with the butterfly, it's like you just trust that things will, present, and the way they're supposed to, and it all works out. Not because you're sitting around waiting on it, but because you take whatever's presented to you and you run with that, and you make the best of it, and so on. Anyway, what I was getting at is that when I first started, everything I did, and if you go and look at my very earliest post, there are, quotes and things that were important to me, but they were very corporate, just cold, very cold. When things really started changing was when when I got settled in my new apartment and started taking the time to put stuff that was personal. Most recently, I'm back in the gym after, quite a layoff. And, I post my challenges, I post my successes, and that's when you really start seeing, the feedback, because that's what people want to know, that they're not alone in those struggles, like you said before. One thing you mentioned in the podcast debut is this idea, so much of the competition comes from the idea, you were talking about competition versus collaboration, and so much of this comes from the idea of everything being a zero-sum game. If I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. And especially when we're talking about the hero community, it just doesn't have to be that way. It's like we can better help everyone if we work together, but people get locked into that zero-sum, mentality. So do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a super broad conversation. So I'll just take the liberty of picking one narrow slice, maybe to get started or capitalize. I don't like zero-sum game is interesting. I also think about absolute sum versus net sum. That's another conversation, maybe. Trying to think back to the podcast that you're referring to, but ultimately, so just because resource, scarcity mindset, right? Mm-hmm. We like to hoard things. We like to hoard everything. We like to identify with it. We like to lay stake or claim that it's mine. And in an audience or a community where everybody's doing that, it almost becomes a necessity, because if you don't claim it, somebody else is, then you're not going to have access to it. And to get access to it, you're either going to have to do any number of things or barter or trade. You know what I mean? Whereas if it's a community where it's just take what you need and give what you can, you never have to worry about that. We don't have to spend a lot of frustration or strategizing on we can spend that mental energy, the physical energy, the emotional energy that we would otherwise spend there on greater things, right. Adding value to the whole. And I likened it to, I started to develop that in the Marine Corps. I don't know, maybe too late in my career, but as a squad leader, I'm assuming our audience is largely military. So as a squad leader, I always wanted to have the best damn squad in my platoon, period. And that meant like everything was ours, doing it better than everybody else, competing against my left, competing against my right, gather the resources and go forward. I focused on my people. I focused downward or inward. And that was cute. And then when I was a platoon commander, same thing. I wanted to focus on my platoon. I want to have the best damn platoon, reiterate the same thing that I just talked about. And then when I was a company commander, I wanted to have the best company, right? And finally I realized it not until maybe the latter half of platoon commander years, company commander years for sure. And it was like, I'm doing it all wrong. I'm doing it all wrong. When I was a platoon commander, I wanted the best platoon, and it was at the expense of the other platoons. But now I'm a company commander now, and want to know what's really, really frustrating is that I can't get my 4 platoons to frickin' cooperate with each other, to recognize that, strengthening up your left and your rights will make you stronger so that your men can focus at the task at hand. And your job as a platoon commander then isn't really to focus so much inward or downward. It's to strengthen your left and your right so that your people can do their job.
Right.
And
ideally,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, ideally, if you train the best Marines possible, and then send them out to train leadership by example. You train them, send them out to other companies to improve those platoons, those squads, those companies, those, then it's, you're focusing outward, and you're doing your part here, and then letting them go and make the entire Marine Corps better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I get that. Maybe the direction I'm really ultimately going is that let's continue to play the example in real world where, so I'm a company commander now, and in training, I want to grab all the ranges. I want to take my company to the range, and I want to get all the ammo allocation, and I want to wheel and deal with the gunner to grab a little more than what I need, because I want to have the best. It comes at an expense to somebody else, right? Instead of sharing the range at the same time. Like, ultimately, we're not spending all 24 hours at the range shooting and moving. I mean, there's rest periods, and why couldn't we collaborate a little bit more? But anyways, keep playing this out to where, throw it into you're in Fallujah now, and you're a battalion, and you're online, and you're sweeping south, clearing a zone. And I'm realizing, I mean, I'm exaggerating now for the sake of the story, because I auto-corrected much sooner. Others may have not. And you're going down, and now you've got your company, and you realize that your left flank sucks, and that you can't expend all firepower in your direction of advance, because you have to reserve some to your left flank, because the unit to your left sucks.
Right.
Or isn't as trained as you are. Mm-hmm. And then you start to say, well, why aren't they as trained as I am? Well, because I've been busy like stealing all the ranges. Right. And I've been busy stealing all the ammo. They never had the opportunity to train. Right. And I never wanted to share my information with them. I wanted to keep it all to myself, because I wanted to be the best, and I wanted people to recognize that I was the best. And so, I mean, again, this is a tongue-in-cheek example. It didn't quite happen this way.
I get it.
But the example is pretty clean. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, if I had been that much wiser as a squad leader all along, to realize that if I helped my other squads, right, even from the sake of competition, right? So pause the example and roll into a civilian style example in the sporting field. And we all hear how, a Division I, third place seed hoops team ends up getting toppled by, the 54th seed, whatever. Right. Well, it's because they played down to that team's game. Or if you look at it the other way around, the other team played up.
Right.
And like, what better thing to do than to make your competition better, because then that forces you to work harder, train harder, and be better. Right. Now that's in a competitive. Now I'm not really, the Marine Corps, we're not talking about making the enemy better. We're not doing that.
Right.
But at least on my same team, why wouldn't I want to make? We're all part of the same platoon. I should make first squad and third squad, and I should help them, and we should share, and we should collaborate. As a platoon commander, I should be helping the platoons to my left and the right, because when push comes to shove, I want them to be highly trained as well. Right. And I don't think that that's a stretch for now playing the parallel into our everyday lives. Our everyday lives with our community, our friends and our family, and even strangers. Separate this from, Apple fighting Samsung. Like, I get it. That's not in the business sense. This doesn't pay out. Right. Maybe so cleanly, but I bet you it does. But anyways, like, what about we just start there inside the home front, brothers and sisters, neighbors.
Every day when you're driving, we the cutting people off and all these, all this, again, everything is about me. And I've discovered this more and more and more. Everything is about me first, got to be first in line, got to be first. And all we're thinking is about what we want, what we need. And we're not considering that, that person might be driving slow because they have, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't even matter. The point is, we don't ever put ourselves in other people's shoes. It's all about, me. And, for me, the way I look at it is, and I say this to people quite a bit. these people who are going around road rage and just all just the ugliness we see. How many of us say I hate people, and yet it's not that we hate people. We hate the way people act, and people act when they behave badly. It's almost always because they're unhappy with something in their own lives, whatever it is, and so they take it out on the rest of the world. And I keep saying that in the most simplified version, simplified story, my job in this world is to help people be happier through whatever, better communication, whatever it is, through my book, through my podcast, whatever, help them be happier such that they can go out. Ideally, they would go out and use their gifts to make the world better. If at the very least they don't go out and cause accidents or shoot up places or do whatever it is because they're angry, or if I can just get people to get up out of bed in the morning and smile or compliment, or again, as I said, not make it worse.
I roll that back one step even more internal, and that's I do my podcast for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
because
yeah.
It's a healthy reminder for me to be a better person. Who am I to throw fingers out at the rest of the world for being lesser when I can't, be better myself? I use the driving example exactly in one of my podcasts, whether it's my personal one or the one I do for Spartan. I think it's in a couple of my writings, but it's powerful. Driving's a big trigger, man. It's crazy. But there's a quote, and I can't remember if it's Seneca or if it's Marcus Aurelius, but it's definitely Stoic, and it says, there's different paraphrases, but ultimately it's, who are you to assume that somebody else's intentions are any less nobler than your own?
Right.
And when I find myself getting frustrated or judging or passing judgment or assuming things, that quote pops up into my head. It's like, whoa. To that individual right now, it's just as noble to them what they're doing for their reasons. Who am I to judge that? The only difference is that I can take a deep breath and be the better man and understand that, whether or not they have the capacity, the faculty, or whatever to do so, or they just deliberately choosing not to.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I've had many blessings in my life. I'm very thankful for any number of things, but in my life, I consider the real blessings to have been almost 300 pounds at one point, to have gone through mental, physical abuse, all these different sorts of things, because for whatever reason, I was able to take those things, learn from them, and then hopefully go out and teach others how to take that breath, how to step back and think before, because the emotional comes in first, always. It always does. But the important part is just taking a breath and just, okay, how is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact other people? The consequences, is this really worth what what could come from it? Is it? But I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We live in this ridiculously fast-paced world, and everything, as we said, everything is about me, and just that slowing down and realizing that there are just bigger, more important things, whether it be your family, whether it be your health, whether it be whatever, than getting to wherever you're going 5 seconds sooner, or anyway, I digress. But something else that you made me think about when you mentioned the quote thing, you were talking about, and again, this goes back to lack of authenticity or lack of introspection, because that's the real difference. Is that you, me, people like us, we're very, as I said, very cerebral, very introspective. We're not just looking at other people's behavior, we're looking at our behavior, and is it consistent? Am I doing as I say, or is it? And I'm, in my case, a lot of times it's do as I say, not as I do. But it's and I catch myself, and I'm quite aware of it. It's like, you need to take care of yourself. You need to put yourself first. You need to, and it's like, but then, but for me to do that, it's like, well, yeah, but that's different, it's like, but it's not. And it's a constant, constant conversation. But what I was getting at is you mentioned people, quotes, whether it be quotes that they post or quotes in their emails, things like that, that are so inconsistent. And I hope that it's kind of a matter of, this is the person I want to be. So maybe if I'm going to think positively and hope that's, the case. I know this morning, because I have two quotes at the bottom of, in the SIG of my email, and one of them is an Ayn Rand one, I think, and the other person, I can't remember the name, but one of them says, the goal isn't to live forever, the goal is to create something that will. And the other one is, and this is the Ayn Rand one, it's semi-paraphrased, it's not, darn it, I printed it out this morning because I wanted to put it over my computer just to continue to remind myself. I mean, I live like this every day, but just to remind myself, it was basically not, I'm not asking, God bless it. Okay, you go ahead and talk. I'm going to find this thing because I took my
I was just getting ready to start looking for it. I think it's very easy for people to be introspective. Anybody can be introspective, but the level of their emotional intelligence and social intelligence limits introspection. And so while a lot of people walk around saying, "Oh, I'm so self-aware," like, yeah, well, you also lack plenty of emotional and social intelligence,
right,
or character values, traits. And that's it's not trying to be a jerk or anything to that person. Like, yeah, okay, I can sit here and do math problems all day long, but if none of them are right, well, I mean, I'm doing math problems. I mean, what's the point?
Right.
So introspection is the first step, but I mean, it's the basic step, and the fact that somebody is taking a hard look at themselves is a positive for sure, but that doesn't.
The question is, what do you do with that? For you and I, the introspection is, again, am I being consistent, congruent? The theory that I posed in the book that I wrote is basically, to your point, if you can be introspective, but if then your next step is, for us, we shine the spotlight on our lives, and then we look for areas that we need to change or improve upon or whatever it is. Again, backing up, my theory in the book is that people will look inside, they won't like what they see, and so their next step is to self-medicate it, whether it be through alcohol or drugs or eating or Facebook or Netflix. There's so many ways that we can, so there's people who they look and they, for the sake of appearances or whatever, they don't want the dark, they don't want to accept the dark sides, or they've bought into, I heard a book recently called it bullshit rules, basically that I should do this, I should do that, I should the other. And so if you buy into that, then anyway, I got myself off track there. But I think, it's yes, you can look inside and look at the darkness or the, whatever. If you don't accept it and do something with it, if you just tamp it down and try to hide it, that's where I think the anger and the unhappiness and all of that stuff comes from, because we're expending so much energy trying to hide who we are, rather than accepting that all of us have good, all of us have bad, or not even bad, but challenges, things that we're, less than perfect at or less than ideal, but the thing, it's what makes us human. So I think that, it's what you do, as you were saying, what you do with that introspection that, that really matters. Anyway, so I found the quote. The quote is, the question isn't who's going to let me, the question is who's going to stop me. And like I said, it's Ayn Rand, and I love that, because that's me. It's like, I don't take no for an answer, and I bulldoze through things. And sometimes that's not good. I have alienated. In
That
fact,
was the first thing I was
yeah.
just gonna ready to
Oh yeah,
say. Like,
absolutely,
I don't take no for an
absolutely.
answer. Yeah, well, maybe
Yeah,
sometimes you should.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the flip side of the coin, or that's the balance that I talk about when just trying to be aware of the narrative that I continue to reinforce myself, or the narrative that others continue to reinforce on me. And then at the end of the day, like, who even knows if the answers I come up with are
Right,
even,
right,
there's probably somebody listening to what I'm saying, or they're like, yeah, that dude's just
right,
way low on the pole of, so I mean,
right.
who's the judge? Who actually has the ultimate marker? I don't know. I haven't sorted through that yet.
Well, I think a lot of it, it's not the marker has to be yourself, and you like, and this is something is I can have all these competing thoughts and these competing emotions, but when at the end of the day, I could die right now with no regrets, because I know I am who I am. I love who I am. I worked very hard to overcome things to become who I am. I don't like every aspect of me. Again, I have my challenges, but I accept it. And so I think the marker it's for each individual, but in the end, deep down, are you really happy? Are you really content with your life? And I think the answer most of the time is no. That's what causes it. Whatever aspect, whether it be your job, whether it be your personal relationships, there's something that it's just nagging at you.
Yeah, I might not agree with that. And the only way I can say that is, or they just don't know what happy is, that they've only reached the limit of happiness that they think they're at, and they don't realize that there's so much more to be happy. So maybe they're happy yet, right? So, okay, let me get my thoughts cleaner. I don't think that it's safe to say that that's the answer, that they're not happy with who they are. I think that they just haven't experienced a happier version yet to be able to have a new datum point for what happy is.
Right.
I've been the worst possible version of myself. I know it. I thought I was the best possible version I ever could have been when I made decision X or Y 2 years ago, 5 years, 7 years, 11 years, 13 years after I thought I was the worst person I've ever been. And then fast forward 3 years down the road, wow, I'm so much better than I was 3 years ago. I am excited to see who I am, who I am going to be 3 years from now. It's not that I'm not unhappy.
Right.
It's just that I just don't know yet.
Right. Well, but again, and I think we're saying the same things. We're just saying them in a slightly different, and part of that may be a male, female thinking. Who knows? Maybe I just don't know. Who knows? But I think because yeah, I mean, I know that while I'm happy okay, again, this goes back to something else you said in that pilot episode. You were talking about the idea of, you were happy, but you weren't content, or you weren't. It's like, I guess what I said when I sent you the podcast suggestions or for topics, the idea that you can be happy, you can love your life, but still continuously strive to be better, continuously to improve. It's like I love, again, what I do. I love where I am in my life. I can't pay my own bills half the time. So there is a lot of room for improvement and things, but for where I am and what I've been through and where I am right now, I am very, very happy with that. So I guess it's okay. All right. So
I understand that. I understand that. Yeah, we're talking similar things. We're just going slightly different directions. Yeah.
All right. So here, let me see what else I wrote down here. Okay. This one I've been thinking about a lot recently. You mentioned that nobody cares, because you were talking about the quotes, and you said nobody cares, work harder, whatever. And I was thinking, again, driving around recently, because you see T-shirts, you see stuff with that on it, and I thought, in a society now where there is so much pain and so much unhappiness, and in 2016 there were double the suicides to homicides. It's people are so unhappy, and when you have so many people walking around feeling that way, to say nobody cares, that just is insanity to me. Because the fact is, I understand what they're trying to say when they say nobody cares, work harder. I get that, because if we sat around grousing about it all the time, we'd never accomplish anything. So I get that. At the same time, though, to go out and tell potentially fragile people or anybody that nobody cares, that's just wrong, because somebody cares. Somebody cares.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know. Go ahead.
That's a Cameron Haynes shirt, and he's an absolutely amazing dude. And when you take those words out of context, they could be damaging, right? They're very, very powerful for people that it resonates with them,
right.
And they can be damaging for people that it doesn't. And so it's just no judgment here or there. It works for some. Right. Just the example would be when you're working out. Some people like all of the clapping and the cheering. Good job, good job, good job. Oh, you can do it, you can do it. And other people are like, yeah, hey, I that makes me want to punch you in the face and leave the gym and never work out again, right? Or some people like you in their face yelling and screaming and motivating you that way, and other people like, yeah, hey, that just makes me want to quit. So that's all that is. I mean, it's a great quote for specific context, and I understand it. I don't think it applies to every situation, and it doesn't work for me. All things, but it does actually work for me in a couple. When I start making excuses for myself, or when I start trying to rationalize a thought that I'm having, or rationalize doing something. It's just like, you know what, man, nobody cares. Right. Like, yeah, hey, you know what, that actually is empowering. So it's funny because we talked before about zero-sum gains, and I've been trying to twist that in my head as just like absolute zero mentality, right? Everything has to be on an absolute scale, where I'm not convinced that that's the way it should be. I don't feel that. I feel like it should be a net value. Hey, there's certain add to this, and then there's certain detract. Right. And if the ultimate net sum is negative, well, okay, hey, cool. I don't want to discount the positives, but I'm not going to work that direction.
Right. Well, yeah, and an example from my world is, there are so many, probably hundreds of thousands of organizations, individuals and organizations with the same mission, the same passion, the same desire to change, hero suicide rates and things like that. But they're all working individually, whereas if they would, and the thing that is so challenging for me is we have created a technological platform with, in part, yes, we want to connect individuals, but in part I also want to connect all of these businesses and these hero-focused causes, and let me market on their behalf, in the sense that you get your business in there, you say, I'm here, I verify your URL, and then you go out and you do what you're good at. You run your business. This other person runs their their organization or whatever, and I am working on bringing everyone else in. So that you no longer have to fight the whole social thing. But my point is that there's so many of us out there with the same mission, and we're basically fighting against each other. Whereas if we would all band together, we could still have our individual organizations, but we can help each other. If I hear something that, again, like the program, every chance I get, if I know something that would be useful to someone else, I try to point them in that direction, despite the fact that it may have no use for me, or no benefit for me whatsoever, just because that's the way that's the way it should be. And I don't feel like if the competition is too tough for me, then I just need to get more creative and find do something again, rambling, but
no, it's great. because here's the similar vein for me is material.
Mm-hmm.
I want to offer the world my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so afraid of these inauthentic jerks out there and these rip-off artists, right? And it makes me hesitate to want to put it all out there, so I keep it very close hold and I don't just distribute. I don't find different channels to have larger audiences, because all I'm doing is feeding somebody else's game who has lesser ethics than I do, and they're out there everywhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so, but then I started thinking, it's like, well, who cares? And I believe it was Gary Vee did an Instagram where if you're really worried, if you're worried about other people stealing your stuff, then you're just not innovative, or you're not moving forward.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. Yes.
And you look at what Gary Vee's done over the years, and he just throws all his stuff out there, and there's people ripping him off, but he just keeps going, and he keeps just iterating and moving forward. And what a phenomenal,
more creative.
Phenomenal guy.
And this is part of my thought with it, is that if my mission is exactly as I say it, if my mission is to improve lives, to help people, if the content that I'm putting out there, whether it be via writing, via whatever, I mean, my book was for a long time was available PDF download, right off of my other site, because my feeling was, if you really want to help people, then whatever way it gets, in their hands, because you can't help them if it's not in their hands. Now, I must say that I would be horribly disappointed to find that somebody had taken my book and was making tons of money with it. But at the same time, if it was changing lives, I would kind of get over it. But the main thing is that, I don't grouse over stuff like that or worry about stuff like that. Because I know how creative I am, and I know that I can come up, I'll come up with a new idea, I'll come up with whatever. But the other thing is that, I accept the fact that if people, here's the thing too, is that, you have a fairly significant following at this point. I've never gotten that for a variety of reasons. But if it takes someone else, someone with more gravitas, someone with more influence to get my stuff out there, then maybe that's what it takes. I'm not sure that really sounded right, but my point is that, it's like whatever it takes to get it out there. Now, in my case, I'm just going to work harder, and I will get. But I'm really good at that rambling thing. But
it's late at night. It's late at night.
Yeah, I told you it's way past my bedtime. I'm half pumpkin already. But anyway, yeah, it's if you have good stuff. I guess if nothing else, it should be an honor that people care enough to steal it. Maybe that's what it is, or something. I don't know, but there's you can't not produce.
It sucks. It hurts. You take it personal. You work hard. You want to be recognized. I mean, I wrestle with it all the time, and then I just tell myself that's the ego getting in the way. Like, let me accept those. It's normal and natural to have those feelings, but like the ego isn't all of who I am. Right. And my identity is so much more than that.
It's very it's fluid. Like you said, the whole you just have to you go forward, you step back, you readjust, you adapt. But yeah, so okay. Well, I think we've pretty much beaten these things as much as we can, and anyway. But thank you so very, 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 very much for honoring me with your interview and with chatting with me. I love the fact that because as I said, I will reach out to anyone. There's no one that I won't ask. But it's very often we get to this, people get to this place where I'm too important to waste my time on you, and it's my opinion is it's their loss. But when you're trying to grow something, when you're trying to get something out there, it can be challenging and frustrating. So I appreciate that you
I think it's exactly the opposite. Now also I recognize that I'm not at any level of half of these people out there, but it's something that I hold very near and dear, and I don't want to lose. And I know that it could get unmanageable at times.
Right.
If I was 15 times as big, would I be able to even have the opportunity? So you can't hold those guys at fault for that, and you have
Oh,
to
no,
be.
I don't.
Here's
That.
something that I keep in my mind all the time, and I'm going to ruin the story, and I don't know where it was. I'd love to give credit. I know it's not mine, but I came across somebody sent me this story at one time, and it was about a grandfather and a grandson. Pick an age, I don't know, 11-year-old son, something, and or 11-year-old grandson walking down the street one day, and there's a penny on the ground, and the grandfather says, "Hey, Johnny, like, hey, reach down and grab that penny, pick it up, put it in your pocket." And Johnny was like, "Yeah, it's a penny. Penny's not worth anything these days, Gramps. Like, why would I? I'm not." And he's like, "Hey, it's not about the money. It's not about the cent. It's not about that value. The value is doing those things that others just happen to not do because it's beneath them or it's too simple."
Right.
And so if you walk around and do the little tiny things all of the time that others just don't even recognize,
Right.
the value there is the ethic.
Right.
And
Well, yeah,
I just think about that all the time, and I try to do that. And it's not saying that I'm anybody or you're nobody or vice versa. It's just you reached out to me, and if I can help in some way, grow your platform or get my message out, or just, hey, Semper Fi, brother, sister. So yeah, man, it was a good night tonight talking. It's Memorial Day weekend, and I'm glad we could fit it in.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. So you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and again, Semper Fi.
Bless you now.
Take care.
Out here.
Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed the content we shared with you, please subscribe, review, and share this show with your friends. Veramore, the dating app, and Hero Harbor, the social connection tool for heroes, are both in the app stores. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Veramore, Veramore_app, or Hero Harbor.